Well, I think I'm a little hot. Check. Oh, I am hot. Check. Hey. There we go. Okay, I'm looking at the notes. I think we got a good show lined up here, especially talking about League One. Jason, you got to kick out a little early, right?
Yeah, I gotta go be an adult tonight, which is trash.
Cool. And Joe, I am not as up on your team as I'd like to be, so feel free to take the reins and run with it.
Okay.
Is there actually, before we start, are there any obvious questions I can ask you to kind of set you up, or?
It's hard because like any narrative that they could have built with the team keeps evaporating because all these guys keep just like going up to the first team.
Yeah, totally. So that is the obvious one. I think I'll be able to set you up with obvious ones and just get more specific if I don't say something for you.
Yeah, you got it.
Cool, man. I knew you could handle it. I really enjoy your guys' show a lot.
Oh, thanks.
I don't always get to listen, but when I listen, I'm always excited because you guys have good banter and, you always have a good guest. So you guys do a great job.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, man. All right. League One fun kind of sucks though.
It's trash.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm doing this.
All right, boys, here we go for real this time. Welcome to the USL show. We are brought to you by the Beautiful Game Network, and we're sponsored by Roughneck Scarves and Golden Goal Press. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. We have two special guests today. Let's jump right into that. We have Jason Weinstraub coming in from League One Fun. You guys have probably heard of it by now, and you've probably seen seen and heard some spicy takes from him. Jason, how's it going, man?
Good. You see, this is the first time I'm not coming in with intro music. So, I've decided to keep it low key today.
Yeah. Look, are you growing up a little bit? You feel a little
old? No, not that. I'm just, it's been a long day. I didn't have time to cue up the music, never that though.
Yeah, fair enough. Thanks for coming here today. We're going to talk about League One in just a little bit. Joe Goldstein is also joining us from Raising Bulls podcast. I was just talking about how much I love your show, Joe. Thanks for joining us. You up for talking about the baby bulls tonight?
If I have to. I didn't know that I could set up intro music. That next time I'll definitely be prepared.
Oh yeah, let me know. I got you covered. I got a whole database full of intro music.
That's fantastic.
Well, let me tell you the secret to having intro music. Just don't ask permission. Just
apologize to that. All right, I got it.
Yeah, I'm gonna hit record, and you just turn your phone on to whatever song you want.
That's how you do it. Better if you come in 5 minutes late and in the middle of somebody giving actual good analysis and stats, you just interrupt them with music.
My God, that's Jason's music.
Fuck off!
The voice you heard there is Ryan. Ryan's here to join us and make sure we stay on track with his show notes, which you put these up in like 5 minutes, and there's like several bullet points. I was impressed.
Thanks. I got back from dinner and stuff, so in like a half an hour I was able to pull it up while listening to the Beatles discography on it. I saw yesterday, which was a really good film, so I've been stuck on Beatles music recently.
Oh yeah, man. I can tell you're still in college mode, so that was good. A little last minute studying, a little last minute note making. It's perfect. This is that kind of show. Let's start off. Jason can't stick with us the whole show, so we're going to start off talking about League One.
Wow, I can hear everyone cheering all the way from my house. That was wildly inappropriate. Thank you to your viewers. I appreciate that.
People cheering. Jason, is it your mom is cheering from your?
No, I meant cheering that I have to go early.
Oh, I get it. Yeah, it's halfway through the season, and so we thought we'd check in with League One. It's new league, 10 teams in League One. I'm going to pull up the standings so I have some idea of what's going on here. Jason, why don't you just get us started with kind of a general thought of how the season's gone so far?
Yeah, so surprisingly, I think some of, if not the most entertaining teams have been the two teams this year. And so the best team in the league, for those who haven't watched, is North Texas. FC Dallas is pretty much their academy players and their system. They've been killing it. They're just good offensively, defensively. They rotate a lot of players, and every player seems to just be a well-oiled machine. They're like creating them in a lab. They've had the most players on the team of the week. I think they're up to 9 now, possibly 10 player of the week players. And they have the best player in the league in Arturo Rodriguez. And, he has, and I'm only going to be giving stats based off of the halfway mark. There's a couple games that happened today and a couple games, and I'm too lazy to update those stats. But he leads the league in chances created. He leads the league in assists. He's got 3 goals, and even though he's undersized, and that's what a lot of people think when they hear North Texas, like, oh, well, they're 16-year-olds, they're kids, they're undersized. He leads the league in tackles won, and he's won 33 of his 50 tackles. So he doesn't leave his feet often, and when he does, he wins. So he's 65% of his tackles won. And then he also has had 222 duels. So that just shows you he's everywhere on the field. He's easily their most important player. I think the best player, most important player in League One right now, because the offense and the defense is funneling through him. And they also have a lot of exciting players. As you know, Ricardo Pepi signed with FC Dallas on a homegrown contract. So he won't be playing as many games. But their backup striker, who is now the Golden Boot striker after Pepe's departure, and Ronaldo Damas, he just comes in and fills in the slot like it's easy. They also have a young winger, and Sealy, who's a Trinidad and Tobago international U23 player. Shocked he didn't get called up for the Gold Cup, considering Trinidad and Tobago don't have any scorers. And the two teams are just fun. You watch Toronto FC too. They're a fun team. They have a lot of players who I think are going to start getting call-ups, including Jacob Schaffelberg, who already got a call-up from Toronto, signed with them, played against Atlanta United, and had 2 assists in his opening game and was probably one of, if not the best players on the field. So I think because of those affiliations, you see Austin Ledbetter going to Phoenix. I think you'll see those players make the jump more often. And those are the players to really watch. I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the season we see 7 or 8 from those teams alone jump up to the next level.
So, I want to touch on that because I think one of the biggest, it'll come up in lots of topics about USL moving forward and how championship's going to be structured and League One's going to be structured in the future. And one of the big questions was, what's the level of League One going to be like? Maybe that's one clue that perhaps the level is good enough if these players are able to jump from League One all the way to MLS and get 2 assists. That's a huge deal. Do you think the level is going to be good enough for people to be willing to bounce down from championship and be happy?
Yep. I truly believe that when you look at, the top 5, even top 7 of teams, because it's such a, once you get to the 4th position, it's like a log jam. I think that they would fit fine in championship and would be mid-level table. I don't think they have any problem. When you look at teams like Ford, they have experience, right? And that's the one thing a lot of teams or a lot of people might think would make League One kind of the lower league just because of the lack of experience. But you have these guys, and Don Smart, who's been absolutely killing it and has just had, just this, he's scoring. I think he's scored a goal in the last 4 games. He's the most efficient crosser in the league. And in this league, there's not a lot of great crossers, but he's crossing 37% of all of his crosses successfully. And just for comparison, the next player that has that many of a percent or higher percentage is someone who's only taken 13 crosses. And this is compared to his 30 crosses. He's also has, so I think he's at 5 goals now, 3 assists, 22 chances created, 13 interceptions, and he's hustling. This is not where he's just playing on one side of the field. He's 31, I believe, so he's getting up there, but this is definitely a player who I think can move up the USL Championship and be an impact player, especially when you have guys who at Fresno are playing at 37 years old and still seem to be making an impact. So, I think that I don't think there's too much of a gap between competition. We'll see in the later half. You got tired legs. These are the most games that a lot of these players have played in one season. So we're going to see how that works out and how much depth these teams have going into the playoffs for that push. But right now, I've been really impressed. There's a lot of good players in this league.
Yeah, it's going pretty well. Speaking of the growth of leagues and leagues improving and changing, there was an announcement today about the Red Wolves. Chattanooga Red Wolves are going to be building a stadium, and they broke ground on it today, $125 million stadium. Ryan, you want to fill us in on some of the other facts you found today?
Yeah, so when they broke ground the stadium, it was surprising that Tennessee Governor Bill Lee was on hand for breaking ground, as well as the Red Wolves owner Bob Martino. It would do about creating 400 jobs within the area for a mixed-use event of the Red Wolves, Lady Red Wolves. So more than just a stadium, would have apartment, shopping complex, and it's a huge investment of soccer or just into the city alone. And it seems that they're trying to, at least where they're building it, make this something more than just a football stadium. And it's essence kind of like what the Atlanta Braves have done when they built their new place, that they want this to be a place that people will come congregate, visit, and spend more time and more money around the area rather than just going to a football match and then going home when it's done.
Yeah, it's going to be really nice. I like when they have a whole complex like that. Jason, there are a couple teams that are planning to do this kind of thing. Maybe not to this extent, but I mean, that's a good sign, right?
Yep. And Tormenta FC in South Georgia doing the exact same thing. They broke ground on their stadium earlier this year, and it's going to be in downtown around a bunch of bars, movie theater, shopping complex. And so, yeah, this is all about bringing the community to make a whole day of something, right? It's not just going to a game, then afterwards being stuck in traffic or trying to get out of the parking lot. It's a day where you can go see a movie, go to lunch, spend time with your kids, and then have a family event. And with Tormenta only having dollar student tickets, it's kind of a no-brainer for parents to bring their kids.
I love it. I love it. And then that's just League One. You know, I love the idea that they're gonna have these smaller, not towns, but smaller cities that have a center for soccer, and it's just a bit smaller, but it's still just as much of a exciting place to be. Really exciting to see that happening. And you know, they may not stay in League One. What do you think about that? How often do you think about that sort of thing, about teams moving up instead of staying where they are?
Yeah, there's already a couple teams I think that probably should be moving up. Regardless of them being a 2-team, North Texas, I think should be moving up. One thing that I see with Tormenta is they're doing a whole system that's just impressive. Even their League 2 team is out of this world. They've been dominating in their league. So I think a lot of teams, especially the way that teams are going to move down, new teams are going to come in. Yeah, I think you're going to start seeing some movement, and maybe some pro rel people can finally start licking their lips a little bit. It'd be cool to see that happening in the next couple of years.
Yeah, Tormenta. I mean, we got to remind everyone that they made it further in the Open Cup than Tormenta 2 in League 2 went further than League 1 Tormenta. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's just a whole system, and they're actually opening up academies all throughout Georgia and Southern Georgia, not just one area. So they're really on a mission to find this talent that's been overlooked, put them into a system that's obviously worked. Last year, they went undefeated in PDL before they moved up to USL League One. So it's not just that, you know, they have one good team, they have a good system. And I think a lot of these independent teams you're going to see are going to be trying to do that and copy that.
Love it. Anything else you want to talk about? I mean, I'm sure there's plenty more to talk about.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about a couple players that I think you guys might see in USL Championship soon. So we talked about Don Smart, who I think could make an immediate impact for somebody in USL Championship. But let's start with some familiar names you guys might recognize, and then we'll go to some new names. So familiar name that's been playing really well in USL League One is Tyler Pollock. And, you know, I think that he's found his bread and butter. He's great on both sides of the ball. He leads the league in interceptions right now, and he's 5th in tackles won. He's just tirelessly going up and down. He only goes up about 3/4 of the way, which is why he only has 1 assist on the season so far. Also, Greenville just can't score a goal to save their lives, but he does it. He goes up 3/4 of the side, and then is that person that's most important to stop counterattacks, and that's what he does well. That's where those 33 interceptions have come from. He's got 16 clearances, but he's also creating as well. He's got 14 key passes. He's got 4th in the league in crosses. What he did, now he's been put down. But yeah, and he's most duels on the team with a 62% win rate, which is the most of anyone in the league with over 100 duels. So Tyler's been doing it, and he's been doing it consistently. And Greenville probably has the most organized defense in the league. So you hear names like Cole Seiler, Kevin Pulitz, those are familiar names. They've just been rocks. They've been killing it. Cole Seiler, again, he's got 74% passing accuracy. And so every game you see him, they're moving him up higher and higher because he's able to create and he's able to win those duels, especially aerial duels where he's won 55 out of his 84. So yeah, I think that those are a couple names that you might hear in championship. We were talking about Tormenta, so I definitely have to talk about a guy, Connor Antley. And Connor Antley is one of these hybrid players to where he's a back, but you can probably put him up higher because of his athleticism and his size, and he'll just be as productive. He's got 12 key passes, 3 goals, 3 assists, 24 clearances, and 21 interceptions, which is top 10 in all categories in the league. He's just killing it. He's one of those players to where he makes the interception, immediately gets up and springs the counterattack. And that's why Tormenta is second in the league and have been dominant team, because no one can stop their counterattacks. That's their bread and butter. That's what they're good at. And he's a key component of that happening. And then a familiar name on the team that he has offensively that helps with that is Alex Morel. And I think Alex Morel is quietly one of the most underrated players in this league. He's in the top 3. He's got 20 chances created. He's winning 90% of his tackles, 3 goals, 2 assists, and he's just working. He's everywhere on the field. He causes pressure. He causes defenses to give up the ball. So I think that's somebody that could easily find his way back up and someone that you guys should look out for.
I forget he's in League One. That he's definitely good enough to play on a championship side.
And what he does is, if he's not scoring, he's allowing players like Charlie Dennis, who is a huge midfielder for them. He's had the most chances created, the second most chances created in the league with 26. And he just box to box everywhere, but he allows him space to be able to be the pivot to set those passes up and those give and goes. I think Alex Morel can definitely plug into any team this year in championship and help make a difference, just because he causes so much havoc. It allows for you to offensively spread the field and set up other players.
And not only is he tireless, but the dude is fast as well.
Yes.
Really fast. So.
And then we'll go to the Red. So we were talking about Red Wolves. Definitely want to shout out the best keeper in the league, Alex Mangles. He's incredible. Most saves, most catches, most punches, most clearances. Chattanooga right now, I believe, is 3rd in the standings, or 4th now after the Lansing game today. But if it was not for Alex, they would be 2nd to last in this league. And that is not an exaggeration. He has kept them in so many games. And when you look at Chattanooga's score lines, they're winning 1-0. 2-1, and he's the reason why they are winning these games. Just an incredible keeper that I think would be great in USL Championship. And then their central defensive midfielder, Uefi, he's incredible as well. 3rd in the league in interceptions, 85% passing accuracy. And he's one of those players to where they keep him back because they need him defensively. But the times that they do put him up higher, he's the pivot of that offense, to where when he gets the ball, you watch everyone looking at him and kind of their offense start forming around him. And he's athletically just amazing and gifted. He's definitely someone I think that you might hear next year in the league for sure.
And my boy Tony Wall is making some highlight reel moves as well at right back.
He scored a goal last weekend, and then the weekend before had an incredible one-on-one situation against Pollock, actually, where he won the ball and then just had a beautiful through ball in between 2 defenders, and it set up a Chattanooga goal. And when you look at that, those are the things that matter. When you have backs that are able to not just win the balls, but then quickly turn it around and set up the offense to score, that's what's important. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Tony starts getting some looks too.
Mm-hmm. And Alex Mangles, I looked him up because he sounded familiar, played 15 appearances for Portland Timbers 2 last year. So that's definitely someone we talked about last year. I believe maybe, I can't remember if it's him, but I know Drogba scored one of his crazy goals from really far away on a Timbers 2 keeper. It might have been him. Can't remember.
I hope, but
that might during the playoffs.
That
I
might
can't
be.
remember if it was Mangles or not, though. So I don't want to sell him out, but
Yeah, that might be haunting him if it is then, because he's been playing out of his mind. He's not. He's using that as a chip on his shoulder.
Good.
And then another player, just one more, just because I don't think he's going to end up in USL Championship, just because Lansing has an affiliation with Chicago Fire. but I just want to tell his story. So Nick Moon, the most versatile player in the league, he made the team in a closed tryout, and worked his way up to playing as a starter, and now has had top 10 in every category as far as goals, chances created, clearances. He's played in probably 4 different positions this year. He's set up as a striker, a left back, a midfielder, and you can just put him anywhere. He's a great shooter. He's efficient. 8 of his 11 shots were on target. When he does tackle, he wins. He's only tackled 20 times and has won 15 of them. So he is just an amazing player that I think when you look at Chicago Fire's back line, especially on that left side, I think that he might get a trial, might get a call and get a chance, because he's just been incredible for this first half of the season.
That's really cool. I love those stories. You got to love them when they make it that far. And it just makes you wonder how many guys are out there that could make teams and do that well. I bet there's a bunch.
Oh yeah, and you'll definitely see, because it's already happening, Tucson getting some guys up to Phoenix, just because, their back line, it seems to have all these athletic, talented crossing defenders. So, which of course any team can use, but Phoenix especially, since they've got their offense covered pretty well, they can use some depth in defense.
Yep, without a doubt. Any last thoughts before you head out? I don't know. Do you want to stay and talk about the Gold Cup final shortly, or you want to head out?
I can stay for a little bit, but one thing I do want to say is for you guys that are curious about the league, like I said, right now in the 4th position, you've got from the 4th team to the 8th place team, I think you've got a 5-point differential. And that's including, so all those teams. It's a fun league. It's a competitive league. It's a league to where even Orlando City B, who is the worst team in the league, has probably one of the most fun offensive teams in the league. You've got these guys who I think you'll see, like Thiago de Souza, another player who I probably would see trial for Orlando City, just an incredible back who now they play as a winger because of his speed and his offensive ability. It's fun to watch this league and see how much talent that's been missing, right? Like imagine when I watch these games, I imagine if this league didn't exist, how much talent would just be not shown, right? Like USL Championship already has too many players, and some of these players were playing championship and weren't getting the playing time. So that's what I love about this league, and that's what I think about. And so, yeah, I would definitely, if you're a USL Championship fan, check it out and check out some of these players and go, yo, we need a striker. This guy is killing it. We need to add our social media team member and tell them to pass along to get some of these guys up here, because it's definitely a league full of talent.
Without a doubt. And probably growing, right? Probably going to get some more teams next year and make it even more interesting.
Omaha's been announced, and we're going to have a couple teams. I know they were talking about Rochester, Pennsylvania's one of the other teams. And so, yeah, it's going to be growing, and then you're going to see a couple teams move down from championship. So don't be discouraged if your team moves down, because there's definitely a lot of fun and talent going on in USL League One.
Without a doubt. That's Jason Weintraub. He is at Home Sweet Soccer on Twitter. He is part of League One Fun, which is at League One Fun on Twitter. Definitely pick up that podcast and listen. What you just heard from him, he's got a couple of partners that can throw down just as well. So, good stuff coming from them. Give them a shot for sure, and give League One a try, just like you said.
Top 2 teams in League One would make the playoffs in USL Championship. I'm out.
Well done. All right, Jason, take it easy, man. Thanks again.
You too.
All right, good stuff. Gold Cup final. We just decided to talk about this one a little bit. Ryan brought it up, and I always want to talk about this kind of thing. Ryan, let's start with you, man. What did you think about it? You want to read off some of these things as well?
Overall, I would say it's Sorry?
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, well, it's always disappointing to see the result that we did for the United States to lose. There's no shame in losing to this Mexico team, who's a top 15 team in the world, and the United States is currently playing like they're a top 40 team in the world, around 35th in the ELO ratings. While we had a good first half, we didn't make the necessary adjustments at halftime that Mexico, they were just going to outclass and out-talent us by the time we got there. And that's one of the marks against Berhalter, that he doesn't make the crucial substitutions when they did. And I think like at 83rd, we subbed in a left back when we're down a goal, which didn't make any sense. And then when you have a minute left in stoppage time, we tossed the ball about 10 yards backwards and not going towards goal, and it just didn't help our case there. Overall, I'm satisfied that it was only a 1-0 loss, because it certainly could have been worse. We just needed to capitalize off of a few chances in the first half, which we couldn't. And it just kind of made for a tough game. I mean, Mexico has yet to lose under Tata Martino, who since he took over the side at the start of the year. They're a good team, and they honestly have been the most dominant team in the region since 2014, and I'm willing to stand by that statement.
Yeah. Joe, what did you think of the game? I assume you watched it.
Of course. You got good USL representation in this match, because the former USL Defender of the Year, Aaron Long, I thought he had a decent tournament and not a bad match against Mexico. I think you look at this match and you look at the expectations for the U.S. heading into the tournament, and it kind of looked like this might be a tire fire, that, it's possible that they were going to flame out maybe even before the knockout rounds. And instead, you saw progress towards the team, at least ideologically, moving towards something together. I don't think that they're there yet. I think Tim Ream on the back line as a left back is a tremendous liability. He's not a left back, hasn't been since his college days. So I think you saw them exposed a little bit there. Michael Bradley, not the guy who can really provide the defensive cover that I think they need from the central defensive midfielder position. And, overall, I'm not necessarily displeased with what we saw. You look at Mexico and the talent that they've had, and even missing a number of great players, you think that they could easily roll the U.S. And they gave them more of a tough time than I think anybody really expected. If you watch them play against Haiti and other matches earlier in the tournament, you could see that they were kind of going through something as well. So I think it was there for the U.S. to win. I'm not surprised that they didn't, but ultimately I'm happy with where they are at currently. I think obviously once they get a couple more of the players that we expect to be big parts of the next cycle in, that you're going to see some better results overall.
Yeah, I agree with all the sentiments you guys have just laid out there. Joe, you hit on a bunch of my favorite ones. To go back, I'm so glad you talked just long enough that I was able to find this tweet from Sean Monaghan talking about Aaron Long. 5 years ago, Aaron Long was drafted by Portland, played center defensive mid, loaned to 2 USL teams, released, signed by Sounders 2, plays center defensive mid, then some center back, released again, signed on trial by New York Red Bulls 2. Joe, I think you've heard of this team. Played center back, signed by New York Red Bulls, starts at center back in 2017, MLS All-Star in 2018, starts for the U.S. men's national team. And honestly, if it's not for John Brooks, he'd be the number 1 center back. Don't you guys agree? I think he was the best one we saw.
Yeah, 100%. I think what makes him good, especially in the Berhalter system, is he's very, very good with the ball at his feet. Obviously, he was a midfielder for some time, so he's comfortable. He reads the game pretty well. I think at times he can get lost with the ball in the air, or maybe misjudge where he needs to be. But if you pair him with a guy who's a little bit, stronger in that regard, he looks fine. With Matt Miazga or Walker Zimmerman, you could see that Long didn't have to do as much, or didn't have as much on his plate regarding taking care of cleaning up a lot of crosses. So I think that they're in a real good spot with him as a third choice. And yeah, that story for his rise is really unbelievable. And having watched him fairly closely over the last couple of years, it feels good to get that kind of win for the Red Bull system.
Completely agree. Go ahead, Ryan.
And you had touched on it with Berhalter, how he fits assist. and I've honestly seen it with Berhalter, even just through this tournament. He's getting a better grip on how the international game works. It's incredibly different going from MLS club seasons to playing at an international roster, international pool against international opponents. And so Berhalter is definitely getting a better grip on it. And this is merely month 6 of what's likely to be a 4-year project towards qualifying for Qatar 2022. So anyone, and not saying you said it, but I've definitely seen the sentiment on Twitter. Anyone saying that Berhalter needs to be out of a job or get sacked for this, it doesn't help our case. The fact that we waited a year to get Berhalter, only to then sack him in 6 months. The United States should have no shame in losing this tournament. Mexico was the clear favorite coming into the tournament. They've won it 8 times for a reason, but yeah, we're pointed in the right direction, in my opinion. Like you said, Aaron Long, and then we have basically Adams and Way, at least waiting in the wings. St. Louis's own Josh Sargent waiting as well. But I guess overall, in the end, for some of these players like Zardes, Morris, Ream, Michael Bradley, honestly, it's time to thank them for their service, or in Bradley's case, tell them to not let the door hit them on the way out and start moving on to the next generation.
Yeah, I mean, I won't sign off on that 100%, but I do want to say that, I think the first 30 minutes or so of the game, as an American, it might have been some of the most entertaining soccer I've seen against Mexico, because, we were making moves, we were creating chances. We didn't finish, that was I don't know. I want to say that was the biggest problem or second biggest problem in the whole game. But I heard somewhere, I think it was Extra Time Radio said something like our XG for the game was 1.8 and Mexico's was like 1.2. And yeah, there were more shots, Ryan. I saw your tweet there that they were knocking on the door and it was bound to happen. And I completely agree. But a lot of those shots were kind of low chance shots, and we did an okay job defending, and it got worse and worse as the game went on, for many, many reasons. But I think the main thing I want to try to focus on is that the first 30 minutes were good. And Greg said it was a process and we were going to get better through the tournament. And basically, so far, I don't think we can prove that anything he said about the process and about the players, and even though he's made strange moves, we can make a logical progression of why he did those things. So far, I don't think there's anything we can say that Greg has done a whole, terrible job about. I think he's on the right track, and I think we can't prove him wrong per se at this point.
Yeah, I think.
Sorry, go ahead, Joseph.
I think that when you look at what you want to see as a U.S. fan coming off of the disastrous over a year, that the U.S. was really just kind of floundering, and it looked, rudderless and hopeless. And I think what you want to see from these teams when they go out there is that they continually look better each time they're on the pitch, that they have a clearer idea of what style they're going to be playing, that tactically they look strong. And yes, they did start to buckle a little bit defensively towards the end of the match with Mexico, but I think overall it really didn't look that bad. They basically dared Mexico to try to beat them from the outside or muscle their way in, and they got burnt for that. But overall, it's moving in the right direction. And yeah, I'm banging that drum a lot, but I look at a couple of things that are exciting me. I think the lull that we had from the 2002 to 2010 era, which was very good. And then we had sort of a downward trend over the last couple of years, for the last decade or so, is really a product of moving away from the centralized player development model towards the academy model, and relying on lower leagues like USL and League One to continue to find more players and develop these players. And you're starting to bear that fruit with guys like Tyler Adams and Tim Weah and Josh Sargent, but it's not quite there yet. So it's still the front of that wave. So I have a lot of positivity around where this will end up in the next decade.
I do too, and I kind of want to finish with this thought, and Ryan, we'll bounce to you one more time before we move on. But I want to push on that a little bit, that our factory has gotten going with putting out youth, and there was the terrible lull we've all talked about, but Josh Sargent and Weah are just the tip of the iceberg. I think the next generation after that already has some talent. While not all of them will be as good or better than Sargent and Weah, they show promise of being that good or better. And there's more of them. And, if we can, hopefully that's not a one-time deal. I am worried about that with the U20s right now, but U17s already, there's a pool of players that some of them look very good. And between 17 and 20, we may bounce up 3 or 4 more guys that are like Mendez, Ledesma, Dest, guys we hadn't heard of or didn't shine quite yet. So, the factory is going, and it's only going to get better as we figure this out, as more teams become more like Dallas and Red Bulls, and see how useful that is. We have all these expansion clubs coming that will have MLS academies, and USL academy system is going to get going in the next few years. And hopefully we get that rolling heavy in the next 5 years. And that's just multiple levels of academies and development. And the more players we can bring in on that level, the less fall through the cracks. It's looking positive. We just got to really keep pushing and developing. And so I'm just kind of agreeing with you, Joe, on that there is potential for the future that's going to help these guys out as well, even if it's 2026 by the time it's really going. Ryan, what do you think? Any last thoughts about our national team?
I definitely agree with you, Phil. It's going to be something that we have to, at least, it may not even be solved this cycle for 2022. Our goal for 2022 should just be qualify again. And then in 2026, that is at least the tournament we should definitely go after, especially considering we're hosting. The team, at least internationally, I want us to at least follow the model of is Belgium. In 2010, they had missed the World Cup in South Africa. They had missed the Euros in 2012. It took them until 2014 when, of course, they knocked us out in the round of 16. Then they made it to the quarterfinals in Euros in 2016. And then obviously we saw what they did in 2018's World Cup, racing all the way to a third-place finish in it. But you just saw like a big accumulation of like a multi-cycle project that they worked on from 2010, basically one of the biggest failures for them to miss the World Cup, to now qualifying and getting third place in 2018. It proves that there's a path to be done, and that even in like the darkest moment of us missing out in 2018's World Cup, that there's a way we can move forward and find a way to turn the factory to produce a golden generation, much like what Belgium has done the past year. It's possible. It's going to take a lot of a lot of progress, and it's just something that, as most of the fans in the United States should understand, is it's not going to be an easy fix. It's not going to be a quick fix. We just kind of have to wait it out and see the fruits of our labors in 2022 and 2026.
Completely agree. It's fun to talk about, boys. I'm glad we brought that up today, and I've enjoyed talking about it with you tonight. Something we need to get going is something like the Red Bulls, kind of like I mentioned earlier, and I almost wanted to fit in there that North Texas to Dallas might have a similar thing going, where Red Bulls have lost a lot of players to the first team, but here they are succeeding, Joe. Crazy.
Not just the first team either. They seem to be feeding all of the rest of USL. These guys who, they're caught in between, which is terrible. And the most recent examples are guys like Junior Flemings, who was at the Gold Cup, Jose Aguinaga, who is helping power Phoenix through a fantastic stretch that they're on right now. Andrew Tenari, who's killing it down in Tampa Bay. It's unreal. And, year over year, they're kind of in a spot now where I think they're going to go through a little bit of a lull if they're strictly going to be relying on academy players. But we see them pulling in a lot of guys from other regions as well. There's a little bit of whispers out there about the regions for discovering players and recruiting them to your academy are going to be going away, and that's something that I think would obviously really benefit a team like Red Bull that shows that there's a path to the pros. And then you also, you said, you got Dallas and you've got the Red Bulls. Don't sleep on Philly Union, who are doing a great job with Beth Steele and bringing players through that are getting, a lot of MLS attention and contributing in big ways there. I think if teams in MLS don't want to go the route where they're going to pay oodles and oodles of cash to have, the best starting 11 possible, that you can rely on these sort of trial by fire lower league guys and get, some fantastic long-term return on your investment. Yeah.
I've often kind of wondered about the Red Bull system, because it does seem like they rotate players even to the first team. And it is what, I don't know what the roster size in MLS is, but if you include the USL players that they bounce up throughout the year, I mean, there's like 36 or more players that have spent time in MLS, right? Have you looked at that?
Yeah, so more often than not, you have guys bouncing down from the first team, and then they'll also spend time, back at MLS level. But the numbers of who is allowed to be down there for the full year, and then what players are allowed to be loaned down weekly are very murky. So I'm not exactly sure at any given moment how many players are going down. But most recently, this past game that you had Matthias Jorgensen, who came in at like a $2 million transfer fee. So it almost feels a little silly to see him at the USL level, but he's only 19 years old and he's got a lot of developing still to do. Evan Loro, who's obviously been starring for the team for a long time. Christian Caceres has spent time down there recently. So, it's almost like in some ways that guys who have a role on the first team but aren't necessarily going to be able to get a lot of minutes, they need to continue to keep those miles on their legs so that when they do get called upon, they're able to contribute. And Caceres is a perfect example of that. He shows up with a 92nd or 93rd minute assist on the game tying goal this past weekend in Atlanta.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm getting at though is that it's kind of like Sporting Kansas City, where if they start getting a little too rusty on the first team level, it doesn't hurt them to go down. Yeah, the playing level's lower, but they're still getting reps at an exact like role within the team that is a reminder of, hey, this is what you do on the first team, and here's you doing it with athleticism thrown in with the second team. So, like it's just all useful. And yeah, they have to give them minutes, but they rotate so many players in that athleticism plays a huge role with the Red Bulls as well. I feel like, I don't know if that's true. That's kind of what I've been pondering from time.
Yeah, 100%. And because of their style, because they're a high press team, fitness is a huge part of that. So that goes to that sort of rust that you mentioned. But the other thing that I think I like to see from the team, and something that I've seen a couple of times this year, is the responsibility side of things. So when you're playing down at this level, it isn't a punishment. It's because you need to have that time and you need that growth, and you can't treat it like you're playing down to this opposition. You need to show up and you need to put in a shift. After a match earlier this season, I won't call out specifically what player it was, but I have never seen this before, but John Wolyniec actually called him out of the locker room, and he didn't exactly rip into him because I couldn't hear what he was saying, but there was a lot of animated hand motions going on. And it came down to that at a certain point in the match, he just kind of stopped playing. He was a little frustrated. You could tell that he felt like he was doing more work or was maybe above the rest of the team. And Wolyniec let him know that that's not going to fly here. And since then, I've seen a big change in him. So that's another part of this that I really like, is that, the team as a whole doesn't begin and end at the MLS level. You need to do the same thing in USL. You need to show up in the same way. You need to act with the same professionalism.
I wonder, I don't know if you wanted to name the player or not, but I saw a game where Kamar Lawrence came out in the 32nd minute or something. And I was like, that dude doesn't look like he's trying. I'm not even sure he's really injured right now. So I don't know if that was related or not.
No, unrelated.
Good. That was mean of me to set you up in case I didn't think it was.
That's all right. No, I don't mind.
Right on, man. Any other thoughts about Red Bull? I mean, looking at where you guys are on the table, I don't know if everyone saw this happening again, because there have been so many losses and so many guys going up to the first team. Tom Barlow, I feel like, was a big loss, but that's an easy name to remember for a guy from St. Louis. Are there other guys can you name off all the losses this year, or at least a few of them that have hurt?
The two biggest ones that hurt. So we thought that coming into the season, knowing that Bradley Wright Phillips was going to be up top for the Red Bulls again, we weren't going to see too much of Brian White. So, we would get him for a couple of games, and Tom Barlow, this was going to be his year to kind of take over the team. But, Bradley gets injured early, so Brian starts starring there. So that pretty much immediately erased his contributions from the USL side. And Tom started at such a great level that you couldn't possibly keep him there. And, there's three young strikers on the Red Bulls right now. There's Matthias Jorgensen, Tom Barlow, and Brian White. And Barlow was in such great form, and White was being so heavily relied upon, that you had to send Jorgensen down. So it was a little bit kind of, I think, crazy in that regard. Those two are the biggest ones. The other thing that has happened this season, and this isn't necessarily a loss to the first team, but Alan Giannis came into the season as, one of the known quantities on the back line. And I think everyone was expecting him to kind of pick up the ball where he left it last season, where he was a quality left back. He didn't always get all of the reps because there were other options to kind of go through, but it looked like he was going to be the starter. They brought in some unknown guys, a converted midfielder in Janos Luba, Reese Buckmaster from Ohio, Indiana. He'll kill me for saying that. From Indiana, yeah. And Edgardo Rito, who he played on the same team with Christian Cáceres, but not at the same time. But I think they share an agent. But so these guys come in, and I'm looking at the situation as it's going to be one of these three, and instead, Giannis becomes the question mark, and his performances have been really difficult. So that loss has been a little bit difficult. I know it's not exactly the same thing. And then, of course, Christian Cáceres playing more with the first team, and I think people seeing him as the heir apparent to Tyler Adams' loss this past offseason are the ones that affected the team the most. But Jean-Christophe Kofi from DC United's academy ended up having his homegrown rights traded to the Red Bulls. Kyle Zayats, who was a Red Bull Academy player, and again, coming into the season, I didn't expect much from him. Those two guys have done an admirable job filling in that sort of 6/8 role. So it hasn't been too bad. There's more players lost to the first team in previous seasons, but this year we're seeing a lot more rotation throughout the whole squad.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. I love to see it, and I love to see that system. I mean, it doesn't stop. It keeps working. So any final thoughts on Red Bull before we move on?
One thing that I'm going to be looking at over the next couple of matches, they've drawn 2 in a row where they were up a man for the majority of the match. They've got to figure out how to break down teams again. Some of that is Vincent Bezecourt working his way back from injury is still a little bit rusty. I don't know if you guys watched the last one, but I think he hit the crossbar and the post at one point and just missed off frame. So he's still getting himself back into shape, and I want to see him do well. But I also know that he's not a USL player anymore. He's really an MLS rostered player. So I want to see them get back to having either Jean-Christophe Kofi or Jared Stroud playing in the middle and try to groom whoever the next attacking midfielder is going to be.
Yep. Got to look to the future. You can't get stuck for too long or the system stops working. So
that's right.
Love it. Okay. Thank you again for that. We are going to move on just to a couple more news hits here, and we're going to call it a day. We're about to hit that 45-minute mark. Actually, we just did. So good show so far. This has been fun. This is big news. I got super excited about this today. Devin Kerr kind of teased this. He said, what was he saying? He was saying a top 5 team is going to have a huge announcement in the next little bit or something like that. And so everyone started guessing, maybe New Mexico United announcing a soccer-specific stadium, a lot of fun guesses out there. I didn't expect this at all. Sebastian Velasquez joins El Paso Locomotive. Big signing. Ryan, why don't you fill us in on the details here?
Yeah, so he's moving from a K-League 2 side from South Korea. He's 28 years old, has previous USL experience with 2 seasons with Real Monarchs, where he bagged 16 goals and 47 appearances. And previously, he had played for Real Salt Lake, 38 appearances, NYCFC with 12 appearances, and pour one out for Rayo OKC with 16 appearances. But this seems like a massive signing for El Paso to really boost their attack and just push them forward.
Yeah, he's a really good player. I didn't realize he was in Korea. I just assumed he was still with the Monarchs. And so, yeah, the Monarchs have dipped a bit. He's one of the reasons, I think, among a couple others. Portillo moved up to the first team. And so Chang has been kind of trying to hold it down up there with a bunch of kids. But, I saw Sebastian Velasquez when St. Louis played them last year in the Western Conference. And I was like, who is this guy? I hadn't heard of him. And I look into it and I see just what you said, Ryan, that he's played with Real Salt Lake. He played with NYCFC, Rayo OKC. Nothing exciting there. But he looks great on the field eye test. He is all over the place, and he shows a whole lot of bite in the tackle, and he is really good in the attack. He scored a banger on St. Louis and made it a draw in the last few minutes, I think, in that game instead of a win. So he's really good, and he is really going to propel El Paso forward, a team that's already, they had a slow start, but it looked like one of those things where they had to develop their system, get Jerome Kiesewetter moving, and Velasquez is just going to be the cherry on top. This isn't a move to make the playoffs. They were going to make the playoffs. This is a move to win the league, I think. Even like contend for the Western Championship. On the right day, I think they could do it with him on their team. What do you guys think?
I think Velasquez is one of those players that when he entered MLS, it had to be at least a decade ago. I expected a lot of big things from him. Oh, okay. So more recent than I expected. I expected a lot of big things from him, though, because he seemed like he was going to be the heir apparent to that attacking midfielder role in Salt Lake. But he struggled, like so many of these young guys do, at getting time and putting in consistent performances. A guy that desperately needed USL integration where it was not. So it's nice to kind of see him as sort of like a redemption story a little bit. And he's a tremendously talented player. And I think just with the way that the West is set up and, how close it is from pretty much 2 through 13, that this is a statement to the rest of the Western Conference and potentially to the league of what their intentions are.
Yep. Exactly. Ryan, any last thoughts before we go on? The next
overall,
news
I just think it'll.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I think it'll definitely boost El Paso this season.
Yeah, definitely. A team that's already doing pretty well. All right, the next news, is this it? No, it's not. The next one is, we forgot to talk about this last week, and I did not want to pass it up another week in a row, because it doesn't happen very often sometimes, but there was a trade between Lou City, who got Antoine Hopino from the Tampa Bay Rowdies, and the Rowdies sent over striker Lucky Mikosana. I'm guessing that's how you say it, or close to it. Former Penn FC striker. Ryan, you want to read some of the other facts there?
Yes, Hopino is headed up to Louisville City, as Mikosana heads the opposite way down to Tampa Bay. Hopino had 17 goals in 64 appearances with Reno 1868 across 2017 and 2018, but with only 9 appearances and 0 goals with Tampa Bay this year, he wasn't used as much in their starting 11. So he is definitely making a move up to Louisville, where he is going to potentially get a lot more playing time, as Carson has been saying in our chat. And he seems like a very good fit for Louisville City, and he could get around 4 to 6 assists and definitely move the ball around up there. I'm curious if this is the move that helps send Louisville kind of back into that hunt for that top spot, or at least that top 4 spot in the Eastern Conference. They had been kind of a mid-table kind of a team between 5th and 10th for most of the season, just kind of jumping up and down between there. But does this move help them kind of return back to form that we know Louisville from previous seasons?
What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, I think Hopino is a really talented. He's a quick winger. He can provide service. He can almost act as another striker on the outside. And when you've seen Louisville at their best over the past couple of years, it's when they have a really strong 3-headed attack. And I think that he can easily slot into the starting position there and give them a little bit more of a quicker transition dynamic, which is something that they love to do.
And even right now, I watched the last game where it was who was Louisville playing?
Nashville.
Nashville. Thank you. They beat Nashville 2-1. But he came on as a sub, and that is a really dangerous sub to bring on at the end of the game. So that's really cool and definitely useful. I agree with you there. Some people were going kind of crazy about who won the trade, who didn't win the trade, but it really does seem like something that is going to benefit both teams. Some other things that Carson said that was really helpful to me, because I haven't seen enough Lucky to know what he's like. But shoot, now I'm losing it. He actually, I think we already read off most of the things that Carson said, but he did say that he really likes Lucky a lot, and people are kind of freaking out in Louisville about it because he is so good. And so, as Ryan said, 4 to 6 assists. is good playmaker. So it is a weird trade because they both offer similar things, but neither was getting enough playing time. I don't know. Does this just make them happier? What do you guys think? Why did they trade?
I'm not exactly sure why Louisville would give up Lucky. Maybe they feel like they're already well stocked. But in Tampa Bay, I think he's going to be sort of the guy who, rather than need to open up defenses and cut through teams, he's going to find a lot of those second balls and pick up possessions, and he could turn them into goals. And that's something that they desperately need. Their attack, I think, is okay, but it can be a little stunted at times. And their defense is good enough to win a championship, but if you're not putting the ball in the net on the other side, it's not going to get the job done.
And Carson also just said that Hackworth might have maybe coached Open O at some point before Lou City. So
at Philadelphia Union, I believe.
Oh, you're right. You're right. That's actually something Evan mentioned in our DMs. So thanks. Good job remembering that.
Thank you.
The other thing, I did have a contact that kind of filled me in on some things, and he did say that both players, maybe this goes without saying, but in a USL contract, both players have to agree to the trade. So both guys were willing to do this. And I think that may be why it doesn't always work out. It's pretty rare that both players would want to be traded. But in this case, they were both happy to go. So that's a good thing, and also a good fact to know for the future.
And I think with that contract clause, that probably is the reason why in the past 3 years you could probably count on the number of two hands how many trades there's been in USL in recent history.
And there's other former Cosmo players at Tampa Bay, right? So that might be a little bit better fit for Lucky and Kasana to be with some guys that he's familiar with.
They're just going to be it with a team that was former NASL.
Also true.
Also true. That's true. Kasana, much better said than what I said. I like that. Thank you. All right. Last thing we're going to talk about today is that, one of two things. Open Cup quarterfinals continue tomorrow. St. Louis is going to play Atlanta. That one I know. The really fun news about it is that Emerson Hyndman finally got himself out of Bournemouth, where they just were not going to use him. And he's over at Atlanta United, and he's going to make his debut against St. Louis FC. So, hopefully for me, he is not acclimated to that system and embarrasses himself. Atlanta United. Hopefully for him, that's not what's going to happen. And I think we're all going to agree that Hyman's a good player. I hope he gets lots of time with Atlanta United. But my team is hopefully going to go play their game against Atlanta, which it plays well against teams that are possessing the ball, that are going to. No. St. Louis is going to look to defend and counter, and that's what they're best at, and it works better against good teams than it does against bad teams. That's what I'm going to say.
In particular, that will work well against Atlanta United this season. They've really struggled when teams have set back on them.
Okay, good stuff. I knew they'd struggled, but I wasn't sure what it was quite yet, but that works nicely. So that'll be a fun one to watch. The other one, this one has a good chance of moving on, maybe more so, because although Minnesota United's been doing well, I think suddenly New Mexico United is going to face Minnesota in Minnesota tomorrow night. I think it's 7:00 Central. And I think, New Mexico has such a good attack that I think they stand a chance. What do you guys think?
I would say New Mexico probably has the better chance of the upset against Minnesota than St. Louis against Atlanta. I'm sorry about that, Phil, but it just seems like with Atlanta, after kind of learning their lesson from last year against Chicago, they're not going to mess around with this tournament. It's a team that's going to be on a title track like they were last season with MLS Cup, but they want to lift another trophy this year, or at least DeBoer does, at least personally, to just kind of, he's not under a hot seat, just kind of like cool the pressures at least. But I would say New Mexico going up to Minnesota, they're going to be hyped up. There's definitely, we all heard about the curse and their traveling contingent up there. It's going to be a tremendous atmosphere for that. I think they have a very good chance at moving on past Minnesota to potentially face the winner of the Portland Timbers LAFC match in the semifinals.
I'll tell you what, I think that this game has all the potential to be, 5 or 6 goals total. New Mexico's got a great attack. I'm not sure defensively if they'll be able to get the job done against a team that admittedly has a pretty good attack for for where they're at right now in MLS, and their defense is spotty.
Yeah.
So I think this could be a really fun one. It could be end to end, and I still think that St. Louis has the better chance of upsetting Atlanta. But I'll give you that New Mexico has a good chance of winning this one.
If New Mexico can get by Minnesota, definitely a big rip to the travel budget for the Curse if they have to travel out to Portland or Los Angeles for the semifinal.
Yep. I love it. I'm excited. I love the Open Cup. I hope at least one team makes it through. One more USL team to go to the next round. I think this is since he made it to the semifinal, right?
Yeah,
I think they made it to the quarterfinals before they bowed out to New York Red Bulls.
It was the semi. It was the semifinal.
I thought it was a semi. Okay. So yeah, I'd like to see one more USL team make it that far again. It is totally possible. So you just never know what'll happen on any given day. That's the beauty of the cup. One more piece of news for real this time. Carolina Panthers owner David Tepper discusses Charlotte MLS expansion. Ryan, what are the details on this bad boy?
So it's interesting. So today at Bank of America Stadium, they had just kind of like an announcement that the ICC would continue doing more matches, and that they at least committed to building some type of downtown facility that was like a more recreational soccer facility in Charlotte. But the big quote that I took away from this article was that Tepper, it wasn't attributed to Tepper, but it was mentioned that MLS would announce 2 expansion teams on July 31st. Which is weird for it to just kind of be buried in a Charlotte news article. Well, and it makes me curious, are there, of those 2 expansion sides, are those 2 potentially USL teams coming up? But I'm not sure. I know St. Louis has definitely been pushing forward. You also have Sacramento, who's been waiting in the wing, or at least for one question would be, is if it's in a Charlotte article, is Charlotte potentially one of these teams? Because how else would Tepper know this information if Charlotte wasn't at least being seriously considered for one of these spots?
Ugh, that's so gross. If Sacramento doesn't get in this round, I gotta find someone from Sacramento and just give them a big hug. I don't think Pony cares, so I'm not gonna hug Pony. But someone, for goodness sake, how many times can you get passed up?
Seriously, and they're a really good team. They've got a great organization and great fans. It's just got to be so frustrating to be in their position.
Yeah, to me, this smells like just like the typical thing that kind of happens around this time of an announcement that someone is going to pop up and try to make some kind of a buzz in the MLS world. So I'm going to say I don't think that's the case this time. But Lord knows Sacramento, they're the whipping boy of MLS for sure. So
yeah, these announcements always pop up around the All-Star game. Although I'm curious, like every previous like MLS expansion announcement, they've always had like a press conference at like in the city of when it was. When they announced Austin, they were in Austin. When they announced Cincinnati, they were in Cincinnati. The same to Atlanta and Los Angeles. I'm curious, if you're announcing 2 teams on the same day, are you like going to invite like both city leaders to like the press conference in Orlando? Or are you going to treat this more like they're bidding on the Olympics and have like all representatives and there, and like you open up an envelope and it shows you which teams get in? Or is it going to be more Garber having a big travel day where he starts it in one city and ends up in another city?
What they're going to do
is more curious the logistics.
They're going to get a bunch of briefcases out, right? And they're going to dump out the money in each briefcase. And whoever's got the biggest pile gets the next team. And the big reveal that Don Garber is actually 2 people, and he will pop up in the same place at the same time. Or different place at the same time.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at that. There's the obvious The Bachelor, where he gives a rose.
Yeah.
He's just playing everybody like fools right now. And will continue to do so for years to come.
They have so with the MLS All-Star game in Orlando, they'll have a skills competition this year, which is actually true. I'm looking forward to this. But I always thought for one final really fun skills competition, you would get the head person of each bid, and they would do a charity boxing match at center field, and the winner of it gets the team. And if basically one of those, if you want the team so much, then you should be willing to fight over the team.
Is it a situation where you can pick your champion, or does it have to be the owners themselves?
I would go picking the champ, and it'd be tag team. You do a few rounds of a champion, and then a few rounds of the owners.
All right, I like that.
Yeah, the owners have to be part of it, right? They got to get their hands dirty.
Yeah.
They're worth. Oh, if only that's what they cared about.
Yep.
I guess I'm
Because-
endorsing that. I don't know.
Yeah, because otherwise Charlotte has been definitely cutting their spots in line if moving forward with the money.
Yep. All right. Well, we see MLS. I imagine there's some kind of announcement coming July 31st for the All-Star game. I think we'll be watching that. The skills competition will be fun. But let's move on to the end of the show where let everybody talk about where you can find them and give a closing thought. Joe, let's start with you.
Oh boy. Okay, so you can follow me on Twitter at _Joe Goldstein. You can also follow Raising Bulls at Raising Bull Cast. That's one bull, Raising Bull Cast. And I am the managing editor of the Red Bulls News Network. So you can follow my work and all of my writers' work at RB News Network and rbnn.us. Keep going out there, watching lots of soccer. Hopefully we continue to see the net and the player pool expand as these leagues grow and form into some kind of gigantic beast in the near future.
Ryan, where can people find you in closing thought?
You can find me on Twitter at ILM_Ryan. I'm actually looking forward to this upcoming weekend because I'm actually getting back to watching an actual in-person live soccer. I'm doing a doubleheader kind of weekend celebration for my birthday up in Washington, D.C. So this Friday I'm seeing DC United against New England Revolution. And then the following Saturday I'm driving back down to Richmond to see the Kickers against North Texas. So I can't think of a better way to spend my 21st birthday than watching DC United and just a bunch of soccer this weekend.
Ryan, you're living it up, man. If I had been such a huge soccer fan at your age, I hope I would have done all the things you've been doing, which is study abroad and go see a lot of soccer, turn 21 and see a whole lot of soccer. I love it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So it will be a good celebration. I'll definitely be tweeting a bunch of photos from DC United. Hopefully Rooney can do well for them.
Yeah, and I think we'll announce, we'll do a big away days mystery kit reveal because you ordered one today and I ordered one today. So we'll do that next week. That'll be fun.
I'm definitely hoping it gets here at least by Tuesday. They did say it's shipped, but I'm excited to finally have ordered something from what I've heard has been a fantastic company.
Yeah, same here. I've almost got a hat and or a sticker. I held back for now, but I can't. This won't be the last time, so I know I'll move on from there. Okay, you can find me on Twitter at Phil Grooms, 2 L's, 2 O's. And my final closing thought, it's actually two. First of all, let's go St. Louis. We got to take down, STL's got to take down ATL. And I think they can do it, as Joe said. So I'm excited to see that game. It's just really cool to be able to play such a team in this level of the U.S. Open Cup. And it's a city that's done really well in the Open Cup in the past. St. Louis and Bethlehem Steel, both storied pasts with a U.S. Open Cup. So that's really cool as well. The other one, though, is that, with the women doing so well, someone made a really good comment today. I think it might have been Bame on Twitter, who covers the national team. He was saying to support your local women's teams. And so, we have two in St. Louis in the WPSL, which is the second tier of women's soccer in the United States. We have the St. Louis Lions, the Lady Lions, and we also have Fire and Ice, who were second in the nation last year, I believe, and first in the nation the year before that. So it's a really good program. They're really well. They work well with St. Louis FC. And I bought a scarf. Ooh, it's right behind me. There it is, right in the middle. Fire and Ice. So, I try to rep them as much as I can. I don't get to see them as much as I'd like, but I think everyone should look into that. WPSL, look up and see if there's a women's team in your area and try to get out to a game or two at least, or buy their merch. Just do something to support them. It's really fun to see all the ladies of the world get really excited about playing soccer again, and being led by our women who represented us so well in the World Cup. With that, I will say thank you to our sponsor, Roughneck Scarves. It's the official scarf supplier of MLS, USL, and US Soccer. Get custom scarves for your group or team at roughneckscarves.com. And you can also get, we have sponsor from Golden Goal Press, which is the best choice for you to get custom shirts, hats, mugs, and other items just for yourself or your organization. Check out their amazing products at a fraction of the price of other places at goldengoalpress.com. This is the USL show brought to you by the Beautiful Game Network, which we are a part of. Very proud to be a part of. Thank you so much to Joe Goldstein and Ryan and Jason Weintraub as well for bringing us up to date on League One. That's a show for this week. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks all. And